So how do we think about a high-commitment, high-performance organization? First of all, it starts with the leader. If you want to create such an organization, you have to search yourself first and answer the question I started with. What is your purpose in the world, and what is the purpose of your company? Here is David Packard again, just as one example. We have a set of values, deeply held beliefs that guide us in meeting our objectives, in working with one another, in dealing with customers, shareholders, and others. Our corporate objectives are built upon these values. That was critical. When I went around to ask senior executives why the company was successful back in the 80s when I was writing this case, they said it's our customer. It's our relationship with our distributors and our customers. They love us as a company. They know that we will not take advantage of them. And they hate our competitors because they always do. Well, how did you get that kind of an attitude on the part of your customers, I asked. It's the way we treat our own people. It's the way we engage them in our company. It's the values we ask them to have when they join our company. At Hewlett-Packard, no one, however great an engineer they were out of Stanford, got into the company if they didn't have the attitudes of collaboration and teamwork, and if they weren't humble about their capabilities, because those that were the antithesis of what makes a great company. You have to develop a strategic identity, not a strategy. That's different. Strategic identity does not start with looking out where the markets are and where the opportunities are and where you can make the most amount of money. They start inside the company with the question of who are we? What are core capabilities and our passions? What is it that our people have come to care about, and what is it that they're good at? And then to say, how can we apply that to making a contribution in certain markets where our passions and our capabilities are potentially useful to our shareholders? It starts in a whole different place. As I said, at Southwest, the passion is about taking care of people. They could be in any other business, and that would still be a passion that they have, but they have to choose businesses in which that was an important ingredient in success. At Hewlett-Packard, it was, how is it that we can contribute to the world through the passion our engineers have about creating a great product? Developing that strategic identity is not simple. It has to start by looking in rather than looking out. Leaders who take over, who run a high-commitment, high-performance company have to make up at the earliest point in the creation of the company that they are not going to take a great risk with this company. They're not going to over-leverage the company. When I went to Hewlett-Packard, or when I went to talk to the CEO of Southwest Airlines, Gary Kelly, just a few years ago, when we wrote Higher Ambition, I asked them about their financial policies. In both cases, and in many other cases, the company chooses not to take out long-term debt. Hewlett-Packard did not have long-term debt. I went to the chief financial officer and I said, why is that? Why? I'm not a financial person. I'm interested in management and organization, but I want to ask the question, why don't you leverage yourself more? He said, Mike, you don't understand. We can't leverage ourselves unless we risk our culture in the process. If there's a major downturn in the economy, we would have to do some things to our people, to lay them off, to shrink the company in a way that would damage the culture that we've created. Lincoln Electric, in the arc welding business, has the very same philosophy. They haven't laid anybody off in 100 years. I'm not arguing that you shouldn't lay off people, but I'm suggesting that what you do, how much you do, if you do it at all, has to be well thought out, and you want to avoid getting into a real bloodbath with respect to that. Of course, if you have to do it, how you do it matters as well. But Hewlett-Packard didn't want to take the risk in doing that. They also had another conservative policy. We don't want to grow too fast. If you're now growing at 75 or 100% because the opportunity is out there, stop. Because you're on your way not to creating a high-commitment, high-performance company. When I asked this question of Gary Kelly, how fast do you grow? He said 2 cities a year. Southwest Airlines had requests from dozens of towns to bring their service into that town based on their reputation. But they systematically turned these away in the interest of restricting their growth, despite the opportunity, so that they could hire the right people who fit the company. If you grow too fast, you can't hire the right people, not only in terms of skills, but more importantly in terms of attitudes and values. All high-commitment, high-performance companies start with attitudes. They don't start with skills. They don't start with degrees. They don't start with technical knowledge. Attitudes and values are the thing you can't really change. You can always teach people some things. So that's where they started, and that's why they didn't want to grow too fast. Hewlett-Packard as well. We don't want to grow too fast because we may have to hire people we don't need, don't want, who don't fit who we are. Management philosophy. A leader who wants to build a high-commitment, high-performance company has to start with a philosophy that says people come first. People come first. Customers as people come first. I am in the business of creating trust-based relationships with all my stakeholders. If I'm not willing to live to that, I cannot build a high-commitment, high-performance company, and that may mean I'm sacrificing some things to achieve that. Truth and trust. As you'll see in a minute, high-commitment, high-performance companies cannot be successful in the journey unless the truth about the company and its own behavior inside and outside the company are confronted and used to reinvent the practices of the company itself. Because only if you face the truth do customers and employees become committed to you. So what does a company like this look like once you make those choices? There are 3 core characteristics that I want to talk to you about, and I want you to ask yourself, does our company map against these? And if so, why not? First, let me start with a quote from Peter Sands, the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank in the UK, a global bank, mainly in Asia and in Africa. Here is what he thinks drives him, what he says drives him. This is, again, a typical type of leader. He said, what fundamentally drives me is to shape an organization. So there it is again. Hewlett-Packard CEO Dave Packard talking about shaping an environment. One that simultaneously brings very effective, simultaneously to being very effective in terms of performance, in terms of a great place to work. So there's the duality of people and performance, and something that is actually a force for good. You may not realize this, but Standard Chartered Bank is the only bank probably in the world that has set another goal beyond making money. It is to cure preventable world blindness. That's the purpose of the company beyond shareholder value. They have set the resources of the company in terms of its people and its attention to doing that all around the world. They started out by saying, we will help with our energy, with our capabilities as a bank, working with partners, NGO partners, to create, to cure world blindness. They started with wanting to cure 25,000 people because that's how many employees they had. They were up to 500,000. That purpose has energized the bank and energized its people and made them realize that this is a place they really wanted to work. Well, what is it that Peter Sands and CEOs like him think about? First of all, it's performance. High commitment, high performance companies are not in the business of altruism. They're in the business of making money, but making money for a purpose, as you'll see in a minute, and as I've been talking about. So they do have to think about how to organize, how to structure the organization, how to design its processes, all the elements of the system and its reward system to obtain the best possible performance that will lead to the best possible culture that fits the winning strategy. That's that diagram of alignment that I talked about earlier. They worry about that. They worry about their efficient processes and about all the elements that contribute to performance, and constantly think about how to create the design that will produce performance. But they're also equally concerned about what I call psychological alignment. Creating people who are emotionally attached and trust the company. That's what I talked about with Southwest Airlines. That is what Dick Gochnow at United Stationers in Chicago and in the USA created when he took over the company 10 years ago and turned it around completely. You have to create that emotional connection. And as I pointed out, that's not by talking about profitability. It's by talking about what our larger purpose is. So whatever business you're in, how can you frame that business in terms of a larger purpose, in terms of your contribution to the society and to the community and to people who possibly can use whatever it is you do as a product or service? And if you do that, you will get a huge benefit. People will look out for the larger good rather than for their self-interest.